wanna hear more about it. Okay. こんにちは。はじめまして。はじめましてです。すいません。ちょっとおしゃべりをしまくっておりました。FOG TV、今回第3回目ですね、をお送りいたします。FOG TV なんですけれども、私たち FOG、ちょっと全然頭の中の準備ができてないな。
もう一回最初から行きましょう、高子さん。
そう、これだ。FOG なんですけれども、自然と社会とコミュニティの循環と再生の構築を行うデザインファームです。で、私代表の大山と、あと、長年の友達兼、FOG 非公認、公認、公式チーフおしゃべりオフィサー丸田千佳、あとそれとアシスタント役に、7月から入社した大垣という3人の体制で行っていく、オンライン特定セッションです。主に循環だったりとか産生っていう、新しい知識、こういうなんだよなであったりとか、FOG がやっていること、見ている景色というものを皆さんとシェアをしながら、ゲストを呼びながら、このテーマ、2つのFOG の2大テーマというものを深掘っていきたいというふうに考えています。で、第1回目、第2回目に関しては、YouTube にアーカイブがありまして、第1回目はざっくばらんに私たちがなんか最近どうみたいな話をしているものと、第2回目はミオオーガニック、竹歯ブラシのブランドをしている山本美代さんをお迎えして、で、トークセッションを繰り広げました。で、今回第3回目なんですけれども、ちょっとこれはシリーズ化しようというふうに考えていますが、リジェネレーションという単語をテーマに、イントロダクションというリジェネレーションという形で、最近ヨーロッパでは再生ではなくって、再生じゃない、サステナブルという言葉よりもリジェネレーションという言葉が聞くことが増えてきてるんですね。で、それはちょっと後から今回のゲストであるルスさんにもっと詳しく聞くんですけれども、気候変動、環境変化っていうのが著しく進んでいる中で、サステナビリティっていうその現状維持じゃダメだよって、もっともう再生を私たちの力で自然と、人間が共存しながら再生を行っていかないといけないよみたいなことを、ヨーロッパでは言われ始めてて、日本でも最近ちょこちょこと聞くようになっていきました。リジェネレーションという言葉をもうちょっと理解をしていきましょうっていうような、そのイントロダクションとリジェネレーションっていうシリーズを、何回かやっていきたいというふうに考えています。で、なんか、すごい余談なんですけれども、すみません。ルースめっちゃ待ってるのですが、最近、もののけ姫を見て、おとといね、おとといもののけ姫を見たんですよ。もののけ姫とか完全にリジェネレーションだなと思っているんですけれども。
確かに。あ、そうなんだ。なるほど。
なぜかというと、あれっていうのは、一回そもそも原生林である自然があって、そこには神々のその動物たちっていうのが住んでいて、それをその人間によって、開発って、昔の室町時代においての開発なんですけれども、開発というので山を切り崩していくよっていう中で、一旦山が死にましたが、その後に人間が思い直して、自然をもう一回大切に作り出していこうっていう、完全にもともとの原生林に戻ったわけじゃないけれども、自然と人間が共生する形でまた自然を豊かにしていきましょうっていうような、リジェネレーティブサイドの、ストーリーっていうのがあって、ちょっと今話しながら、そういえばそうだったと思って話したくなって話したんですけれども、そういう話、これからは亡くなった自然、原生林っていうものは、戻していく、完全に自然の手によって戻していくっていうのはやっぱり不可能なので、壊してしまった人間とともにどうやって再生していくかっていうことを理解することによって、それを事業にいかに、持続可能性、長期的な視野を見つけたときに、どうやって人間がその社会生活の中でリジェネレーションというものを、組み込んでいくのかということが、今後すごく必要になってくるかと思うので、今回は、ルースさんにその一番最初の、ベーシックとなる、じゃあそもそもリジェネレーションって何みたいなところを聞きたいと思います。で、今回はですね、私たちが 予算がないので、完全に全部英語でお送りしていきたいと思います。通訳さんはいません。なので、はい、全部英語でやります。なので、それはあらかじめご了承ください。後でアップしたときにYouTube の、翻訳機能という便利な機能があるので、それでなんとなくちょっと理解していただけたらというふうに思います。お願いします。では、いきますね。So, we're gonna start.
Okay, hi.
Hi, Ruth. So, thank you for joining us for Fog TV today. And this is very fast try to like asking other people, like people from other side of the world coming in to here for the guests. So like we might gonna have like a lot, and I know we talk a lot, so like it's gonna be a long conversation, but we are so excited to have you here.
Likewise.
So let me, and I totally forgot to introduce you in Japanese, so like let me introduce your profile first. It's very important. すいません。ルシさんの紹介をするのを忘れておりましたので、まずルシさんの紹介を日本語でしてから、ルスのお話を始めたいと思います。ルシさんなんですけれども、今回ここにもいる丸田千佳は、フォグのチーフおしゃべりオフィサーでありながらも、ラッシュの最近はプロデューサーになりましたね。
そんな感じですね。
ラッシュのプロデューサーが何なのかっていうのをちょっと置いといて、ラッシュその、関係性で、ルシさん、今年の1月にも日本にいらっしゃって、それをお話を聞きましたってめちゃくちゃ面白かったんですが、今回のルシさんの、暮らしぶりであったりとか、なぜそのリジェネレーションっていうのに興味が湧いたのかであったりとか、あと何をダッシュで行っているかという話を聞きたいと思います。で、プロフィールなんですけれども、ノートにも、事前に投稿したノートにも書いてある通りなんですけれども、ルシさん、ブラジル出身で、ビルやアスファルトに囲まれて過ごし、自然が壊れていく様子を見てきた幼少期の経験から、環境問題に興味を持ち、状況を変えていきたいという熱意が生まれた。2004年からラッシュで働き始めました。ですぐにラッシュのグローバル環境マネージャーを務め、多くの環境団体に影響を与えた。後にしばらく期間を経てラッシュへ戻る。改めて3つの目的。リジェネレーティブな環境を与えるためのブランド戦略の牽引、生態系における生物の発展と支援、チャリティー事業戦略の展開レポートを成し遂げるためにまたラッシュに戻ったということですね。で、ビジネスをどのようにリジェネレーションへと転換していくか、良いことをするグローバル企業の影響力をどう生かすのかということに情熱を捧げています。その他、環境やエネルギーに対する分野で修士号を取得、人事支援やチェンジメーカーの育成を目指すリジェネレーションの共同体、リアライアンスやソシオクラシーブラジルやリジェネラという2つのコンサルタントとコーポレートガバナンスのステップアップに向けた実践のネットワークの立ち上げも行ったという、まさにリジェネレーションのスペシャリストで右に出る人はおそらくいない。そんな方です。はい、すみません。仕切り直してもう一回始めます。Thank you, Ruth, for joining us today. Thank you. So, what should we start? Thank you so much. And let me, before starting this TV program, we are talking about you are actually in Germany. We thought like we were gonna ask like how's your quarantine time in London or England, but how's your life in general?
I think the beginning of lockdown, because in the UK lockdown started in March. It was interesting because I had just been to the Philippines and Japan,
right,
and came back, and not long ago, the coronavirus arrived in Europe, and then we soon went into lockdown. So I think the beginning was really interesting. I tried to use the privilege of having time and being alone at home to really do some deeper thinking. And yeah, and I think I reflected a lot about where the world is and like our role as humans on the planet, and how this is a transitional period that's also a very good opportunity. Yeah, so I think I really used the first 6 weeks to go really deep into the most fundamental question about regeneration, that for me it's really connected to life. And our role in creating more life on the planet. And then I started getting really lonely, and I was feeling, I did some research on that as well. There is this idea of skin hunger. Your skin is hungry for touch. I was completely alone. Like I'm Brazilian. I hug everyone. I hug many people a day. Like, I'm a very warm person and very highly social. So I think it was really hard for me. So I found a project to do, and then kind of tried to go back into the world, in as safe a way as possible. And then I went to Sweden to be with a friend of mine who is an infectologist, and he was working on a lot of research around COVID-19. And then, we did a few things together, a few projects together. And then I then came to Germany to start, because the Lush shops in Germany and Austria opened before the UK and before other shops. So I also came for family reasons, but also to already start working with the shops here in Lush, Germany. Also it was an interesting time to see how we can quickly adapt to these circumstances, and how we can kind of join together as a global community, to really preserve life. And then for me, it's I connect that a lot with human health, the health of the environment or the ecosystem, and then business health. And we need a lot of community work and a lot of collaboration to improve those three things. Like, they are all interconnected. So I think it was good to show that we can change the economy, we can quickly adapt for human health, which means we can do the same for the health of the planet and the health of the ecosystems, which are also connected to human health. So what can we learn from the situation that then can help us in responding to the climate emergency or other environmental threats?
Thank you. Yeah, reading, seeing a lot of news about nature become more beautiful. Like in India, you normally can't see anything on the scene inside of it, if you are inside of Mumbai, but clearly there's beautiful mountain because the people stopped their industrial work, and all the manufacturers stopped, and air get more clearer. And also those kind of case, we see it in the world, and people started to learn a little bit about how maybe we should slow down of civilization community, and more focusing on nature. And I was a little bit afraid about for 2-3 months later, after COVID-19 is slowing down, people might gonna start to reproduce again. So I don't know what's gonna happen, but hopefully people are gonna keep in mind about what happened while during the quarantine, and give a hope for the nature. But we want to discuss this like post COVID-19 era with regeneration later, but first, could you explain a basic knowledge or basic idea of regeneration so that people know and in the same page?
Sure. I might share some slides as well in a minute, but maybe just to say that this is an interesting topic as well, because in regeneration, we say that regeneration also has a lot to do with health and vitality of all the different aspects of the system. So maybe I'll just share a few slides. Just a second. We actually talk a lot about the idea of sustainability, that it's to do no harm. And now we need to move into this idea where we're actively improving the health of all the systems that we touch. Because and this has to do with health, has to do with the capacity of that system to sustain life. So whether it's human health and my capacity to sustain life, or if it's an ecosystem and whether that ecosystem has the things that are needed, whether it's nutrition for plants, air, oxygen, water, it has enough to sustain complex life on the planet. So how can we actively improve people's health, and how can we actively improve the health of communities and the health of ecosystems? And this is also some of the work that I've been wanting to do at Lush and trying to do at Lush, which is for us to think about, what does health mean for a business? You know, what does it mean for a shop to be healthy, for an office to be healthy, for a business to be healthy? Knowing that they exist within larger systems, and that if I'm healthy, how am I contributing to the health of the street my business is in? And then how am I contributing to the health of the democracy that my business is in? And then how am I contributing to the health of the, of the forest, knowing that my supply chain, like how we buy our products, is directly impacting on the health of these big ecosystems, like the Amazon, for example. So it's really having this more integrated or holistic, we call, or whole systems, like approach, that we don't exist in isolation. And therefore, I also have, I'm constantly influencing and being influenced by all the other things that I touch and that I connect to. How can we make those interactions positive? Both that I'm becoming better and more capable and learning, but I'm also improving whatever I'm touching. You know, it's like, so there's something very basic, which is, I think whenever I have a conversation, any conversation, do we leave that conversation better? There is more connection between us. Every time I spend my money, that's a transaction, that's a connection. Am I creating more health in that transaction? Yeah, if we sell a product, are we creating more health in the whole system by selling that product? That's for me the core of regeneration, is how can we make sure that every action, every interaction, every decision that we make is actually creating more capacity for the planet to sustain life. Yeah, it's about the capacity to sustain life. I think this is what I was saying during lockdown, that I tried to go really deep into the essence. And for me, the essence is, yeah, like, are we here on the planet to create more life and support evolution? Or are we here to destroy life? You know, and this is the choice we have to make now as humanity, as a civilization. So yeah, I think that's my definition of regeneration.
Ruth, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So you had that time during this, quarantine and COVID-19 lockdown. Did you find something new after you gave a deep thought around those questions, or it's more like reflecting and realizing the importance of it?
I think I don't think it's new information, but I just think it's more insights, like a deeper understanding. And what I spent a lot of time with this, which is like we know that life on Earth that started 3.8 billion years ago has always moved towards one direction, and that's the direction of complexity. So it's more complexity, we have more species, more diversity. It's in the direction of more order, like the systems get more complex with better interaction, but there is also more order or more differentiation. And there is also just more capacity to sustain more life, so it's like life creates more life. And this is why, I also think you can come to this from a spiritual approach, or you can come to this from a very scientific evolutionary approach. And for me, the deeper maybe understanding is humans don't exist outside the system. We are a product of that system. We have come into existence because of these higher evolutionary forces. And then we've created, our economy, our businesses, our educational system, our health system that goes against these very basic principles of evolution on the planet. And this is why there is this misalignment now. So I think I spend more time, I've known this for a while, but I just spent more time reflecting on how do we align? How do we create an economy that is also based on the same very basic principles of life? And what principles are those? And then how do we create community, education, food, to align to those very basic principles, which is life creating more life. So there is something that's quite, I think for me, the new thinking is that it's actually a lot more simpler than we think. You don't need to be theorized around regeneration or to know all the principles, or it's not something that's so like, that it requires expert knowledge. It just requires us to look at very basic, fundamental, existential things. Yeah, and this is the essence for me. It's like life creates life. Like life creates conditions for more life to exist. How do we do this everywhere? Yeah. I think the essence of it was what was special. It's like, let's go down to really the core. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you. Sorry, you please continue the slide you are about to show.
Oh yeah, no, I was just, and then of course, like there are also some principles that come, and different schools around regeneration have different principles, but maybe I just share that as well. So, and oh, sorry, I don't want to share, I want to present. And there are some of these things also come from the way living systems work and a healthy living system. So here at the bottom, we know that, for example, if we look at a mature forest, we can actually measure how healthy or mature that forest is through the interconnection and the exchanges between the different elements. So the fungi and the trees and the birds and the animals. So we know that life operates through connection. So how can we make sure that we maximize beneficial connections when we are designing human systems? And that means, if you take a business approach, how can we make sure that the business is connected to community and that the business engages in beneficial relationships in the supply chain by, for example, paying a fair price? How can we collaborate more with customers? How can we collaborate more with governments? Just how can we create more connection where we are? So I think that's also an important principle. Another one that's here at the top, this idea that place informs strategy. So also coming from living systems and evolution, we know that all those elements, including humans, we evolved together with the environment because we are affecting the environment and the environment is affecting us. So there is this co-evolution between all the elements in the system. So for example, if you look at grasslands and the buffalo, they co-evolved together. The buffalo exists because of the grasslands and the grasslands exist because of the buffalo. The project we visited in Japan with rice growing and, the people that are there and then the birds and the animals. So that whole system co-evolved together. So if you take one part, the other parts also suffer. So we've created an economic model and an education is the worst. We've created an educational model and a manufacturing model that makes everything the same, that's based on replication, and it's based on one solution having to fit all these different cultures and all these different places. And we know that it's actually diversity that brings richness, it's diversity that brings resilience, right? Our ability to go through shocks. If everyone is doing the same thing, if we only plant one crop and there is a disease, that whole crop is gone. So how can we make our strategies that is very informed by the place, by the culture? We talk about the uniqueness. Every place has an ecology and a culture that are unique to that place. Instead of destroying that, why don't we work with that? Why don't we see, okay, what's unique and how can we really make that uniqueness stand out? I can give an example. So at Lush, we started working with a permaculture group. Permaculture is a type of regenerative. Well, it's a bigger explanation than this, but it's a design science that allows us to design systems to meet our needs for food, fiber, shelter in a way that it's more integrated and in harmony with natural principles. So we were working with a permaculture group in Kenya, working with villages of women, communities of women from villages. And they are Maasai, so they are the traditional pastoralists in Kenya. Chika, while I talk, maybe if you can find I have a photo. I have a photo here. Here, the Maasai tribes. And they had, of course, they are also impacting the environment and being impacted by climate change, by droughts, by not having trees, and also by invasive species. So instead of going there and saying, okay, you're going to build a school and you're going to build a factory to produce plastic things, it's like, what is the abundance in your environment? Because it doesn't matter how dry a place is or how destroyed it is. There's always something that we can get. There's always something that's unique and there has some abundance. And there was a particular species of aloe secundiflora, it's called, like aloe vera, that we use for cosmetics, but it's very particular to that region. And we're like, cool, we can use that for cosmetics. So we started that project from the abundance that they had. And now the women, they sell the aloe to Lush, but they're making their own cosmetics. They got the government backing. They learned how to make cosmetics, even though they didn't know how to read and write. And now they're even getting a license to export their cosmetics. They then had an invasive species, which is a cactus that, you know, destroyed everything, caused erosion. The animals eat the cactus and they get really hurt because it's got lots of really fine needles. So the animals die. And they started making juice out of that cactus plant, making juice of the fruit. And the oil from the seed of the fruit is a super expensive, high value oil. So they started to make their own oil and then use the oil in the cosmetics. And because they're using the seeds, it means that the plant can't reproduce as quickly. So they're also, you know, taking care of the invasive species. So that's a key example of doing things connected to the uniqueness of that place. Yeah, I just wanted to explain that principle because I think that's one of the key aspects of regeneration is the connection to place. Yeah, and then lots of things. So maybe I'll just stop there because otherwise I talk no stop, and then it's a lecture, not a conversation.
Thank you. Like, hearing your story, that made me think like regeneration is not only about saving the nature, but like thinking about the entire whole, like holistic earth as oneness, and like human is like part of it. So not only like saving the nature or like saving like the climate crisis, but like also saving the human as well. So many people think it's only about like how we save the nature and regenerate the nature, but not only for that.
Yeah, so I think something key when we talk about regeneration is it's exactly what you said, is to understand that humans are nature. We are part of nature. So we can't separate humans from nature. How can I say? It's an imaginary disconnection. We are nature. We are breathing the same air, and you know, all the molecules of water on the planet are connected. You know, there is no separation. Like there's also this thing that I'm breathing the same air that you're breathing. So where do I stop and where do you start? You know, if I'm breathing what the algae and what the tree is breathing out and I'm breathing in, aren't we the same? You know, aren't we the same system? So I think it's this understanding that that we are nature, and because we are nature, we then have a responsibility to participate in the system in the best possible way. Because we are part of it, it gives us responsibility, and it also gives us the opportunity to intervene, the opportunity to make a difference, because we are part of it. And I think that's really important. And even in the language that we use, I'm very conscious of saying, oh yeah, there is nature and then there are humans, you know, like to use this language of separation. And it's more like, we are nature, we need to design as nature. We are life, you know, I always say, we're also life creating conditions conducive to life. And then how do we act from this knowing? How do I act knowing that I also am already nature? Like our body is an incredible living system. Like it's incredible when you think about it. So yeah, so we are, it is one system. There is really no separation, but we've created an economic model and we've created a scientific model that created the illusion of separation. And this is what we need to move now. This is what we need to transform. Yeah.
Ruth, it's interesting that you mentioned the language could be one of the kind of cause of the separation. But something here, I think, is also part of that reason or the cause of that separation. And I was reading one article the other day. He is the, I think, head of a company, retail company. He was touching upon those kind of environmental protection activities happening around the corporations, which is great. But he was saying that we human beings trying to save the planet, it's more or less kind of arrogant, ego from the human's point of view. And I'm like, I work for Lush, Japan, with you across the ocean. I think I've used in my Japanese language way explaining what Lush is trying to do, like save the planet. And I was like, oh, maybe I've been also disconnected or somehow separated myself from the nature, the planet. What do you think of, like, maybe there's something else other than the language, but like consciousness around that separation?
Can I add that comment?
Please.
Because like I was gonna show you one article about this Darwin's like propose about the competition.
Yeah, I love this. And Kropotkin.
And that like I wanted to add Chika's comment that maybe like we've been like we thought nature is competing each other, or we and nature is competing each other, and then that's how we like evolved as a seed. But actually, we are coexistence together and feel like trying to find how we can have like the comfortable moment all together, and that's how we evolved. That's like how recent research about the biology started to rethink. But before, like we all learned, like we've been like the seed and like nature, we've been competing each other to evolve. And that's like the language we have unconsciousness for like 100 years. And in order to think nature and human and the earth is like a part of this earth holistics, we have to redefine the word or like redefine our like mental mind. And it's kind of harder. Like if we are like trying to live with nature or like have a comfortable zone with like natures and other like component, we need to re-educate the entire human beings. And after reading this article and like after like hearing your story, I was like, what should we do? Like, what can we do? Like I don't have an answer, and like it's harder to get an answer as a human beings.
And I think this is the privilege of the lockdown for me, you know, because I have the privilege. I know many like billions of people didn't have the privilege of the lockdown that we had. You know, they were in a really difficult situation. But I suggest reading Kropotkin. He was actually a scientist that talked a lot about mutual aid and how cooperation as well as competition were part of the evolutionary process. That, even if there is competition at niche level between species, they're overall collaborating around the health of the whole. You know, the species collaborate so that, you know, the whole of life can really exist. And then there were certain evolutionary jumps that could only be explained by collaboration and not by competition. But I can't remember when, let me tell you, when he died in 1921. So, you know, already these theories were out there, and there were even some theories at the same time as Darwin that also talked about cooperation. And Darwin was very misinterpreted as well. But, you know, we cherry-picked pieces of science that fit an economic narrative that was really based on separation. And this is why what Chica said about consciousness is so important, because this is really changing something that's very fundamental about how we see ourselves and how we see the world. And I also think that this is, oh, and just to say that also Kropotkin is an anarchist, and then he also went on to develop some theories around mutual aid and how, you know, communities can self-organize, and yeah, which I also really believe in, you know, as well, like, because I think those things, like, they're all interconnected, right? Patriarchy and the oppression of women, the oppression of natural systems, the oppression of other races, you know, with the black slavery from Africa, the oppression of class, so the elite oppressing the poor. So we've created a human system that it's based on the oppression of the other. So we talk a lot about the otherness. As long as we can tell a story that people who are of a different color are the other, and therefore they don't belong, or people who are of another gender are the other, or they're inferior, or people who have less money are the other, and therefore they need to do certain types of work. Like, we've created this myth that nature is the other, and therefore I can destroy it, or the animals, that a cow is the other, or a pig, and therefore I can exploit it. Like, this is the story of separation and otherness, and that's why I say that it doesn't matter what door you enter, you will ultimately, it's about an anti-oppression, you know. Regeneration is also about anti-oppression, is also understanding that everything has its role and that everything connects to everything else and everything has value and uniqueness and can contribute to life. So I also, for me, it's also really important, the Black Lives Matter movement, because that's a very important, it's a very important consciousness shift that is also going to allow us to change consciousness around all the other things. So I don't see these issues as separate. I really see they're all interconnected around oppression and the otherness. So yeah, and you asked about how do we do that? I do feel that it is by working together. So we can't do this just intellectually. We need to put things into place. So, and use this opportunity. So if Black Lives Matter is an opportunity to work on empathy, working on connection, working on creating safer spaces for people, working on valuing everyone's unique contribution. Wow, let's go deep into this and really implement it in practice. Yeah, have the experience of doing that. Same thing with regeneration and our connection, in strengthening our connection to the natural world. Let's start where we can. And usually the first place to start is the food system, because we're impacting the food system 3 times a day. So that's a good place to start this conversation around health and around how am I creating more health in the systems that I participate. So I think there are some entry points that help shift everything. And we can't stop at so, you know, the issue with racism, it's a systemic issue. So maybe let me just say one thing that just occurred to me. So with the environmental movement and climate change, we focused a lot around individual action. But the change cannot happen only at the level of the individual, because we are participating and we're connecting to this larger system. So we need to do things that have an individual impact, but that also have a collective impact. And with the issue around race and Black Lives Matter, it's the same thing. It's becoming really obvious that it's not enough for me to not be racist. I need to be actively anti-racist. I need to stop systemic racism. So I need to have an impact that's well beyond just my connections. I have to actively participate in the system. It's the same idea. We need to move beyond an individualistic thinking, also in our response or in our actions to make things better. Yeah, I think I wanted to say that too. Sorry, it's a lot of stuff, isn't it? But yeah, we also need to increase our capacity to understand these complex issues and to have these conversations.
Interesting. I guess an hour talk is not enough. We have 15 minutes left, but what else we should ask?
I think because honestly, we just had this conversation this morning at work around that. Let's just use the term diversity and inclusion just for sake of it, to get the idea of what we do.
This is Chika's recent topic.
Well, I didn't expect that you will bring Black Lives Matter to this conversation of regeneration, but as Takako also touched upon, this is not just about the environment, ecosystem. It can be applied to more like organizational structure, or maybe like urban life, or like mental health and like consciousness as well. And yeah, I was going to ask, but you kind of already answered how we can break that otherness, because we always try to group ourselves and differentiate, and somehow that's leading us to competition with the scarce resources, so that we cannot collaborate, or we cannot be all peace, because there's limited amount of this and that, so one can only take it. But like collaboration and actually like spending time or working together can kind of break that boundary. And that also reminded me of the Palestinian Israeli olive oil project. I didn't want to introduce too much about Lush, but there is this project in today's Israel that Arabs and Jews in Israel produce olive oil, which we use in our product. And I was shocked, like, wow, there is a peaceful way to collaborate and actually make money, make living together. But it's not a lot of those cases on this planet, because people somehow compete and draw a line always. But I want to see more of those borderless, third wave things.
Yeah, I think also, so it's not very easy for a business or any kind of initiative to survive when the whole ecosystem, political economic ecosystem, has the wrong incentives. Yeah, so for example, farmers get subsidies even if they're planting monocrops and using pesticides and herbicides, they still get subsidies. The oil industry, they also get subsidies. So we are incentivizing the wrong things. So it's not so easy for the initiatives that are bringing a different way of thinking to survive. And this is one of the blockages that we have at the moment. And that's why we also need to collaborate at the consumer level. So we need people to become more conscious consumers. So we are supporting the right initiatives. And again, to bring food, like, of course, it's more expensive to eat organic food, but is it always more expensive? What if I create a consumer group with friends and we are buying at a discount, you know, and then we can actually buy organic food less? What if I support, you know, my local farm or my local organic project by buying from them all year round? Like, what are the things that we can already change? And I do think collaboration is also hard, but I can't see another way. I think we need the strength in numbers, and more important now, because we talk a lot about diversity, is that we don't just stay in our bubbles. You know, we need to start working with the people that normally we wouldn't work with. So we also need to bring government. We also need to bring corporations. We also need to, you know, bring the whole sector, like the whole society involved in these initiatives. Yeah, I think personally, I've been trying to influence spaces that normally I wouldn't really work with. And it has been interesting. Like, it's hard because I always feel like we need to be patient, because some people are really at the beginning of their journey, but then how can we also not feel like, oh yeah, we know better, or, you know, we have this slight arrogance because we've been doing this for long, or we know better or we are better people because we are, you know, protecting the wild, for example. We're not better people. We have just got more opportunities to have a certain kind of understanding. So I think it also requires a bit of patience from the environmental movement to give a hand, you know, and bring people with us rather than alienate people, you know, because then that's also the otherness again. Yeah, so I find that quite challenging. This is also something that I'm learning. Like, yeah, now I'm part of a manufacturing group in the UK to look at net zero manufacturing for the UK. And it's super interesting because it's a group that can be very influential and work with the government, but we're going to have to work with people that are 10 years behind where we are or where we should be. And then how can we bring them together, and not alienate them, not, again, other them, you know, say, oh, you're different from me, so I don't want to work with you. Yeah.
In order to break the standard of like not collaborating with others, like I personally, or I was actually talking with Tai earlier about how Fog can grow as a company. Like, and I just telling her, like, just doing what you think is right, and that's gonna connect to like what's gonna get better to the world. And I think we can say that to like the company's level or like business level. Like, we only have 2 employees, me and Tai, but like our work is, or like project is like getting bigger and bigger. Then I tell her, like, my philosophy or Fog's philosophy is just to trust and be honest with others. And I guess that's how we can start to move towards a regeneration. Because we can like get that mass trust and like be a collaborator with others.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a word that's super important, which is trust. Yeah, I also use that word a lot because I think it is fundamental for collaboration and fundamental for us to move together as a society, is that we actually increase the amount of trust that we have in each other, you know, in our institutions. Like, there's so little trust in our institutions? How can we increase trust in companies? How can we and trust has to do with integrity, right? So we can't just increase trust without increasing integrity. So those two things also need to come hand in hand.
I completely agree with what you all said on trust. And it's funny. We'll make fun of me, Tako, if you want. But at the business meetings or the corporate situation, I'm finding more engagement or I enjoy, but funness of that time or the outcome of it if I go really casual. Even to the big corporations kind of initial kickoff meeting, introducing ourselves hi, this is Chika, I do this, da 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 da. But somehow at the business kind of situation, we try to be professional, yeah, in a way. But then if I find that person's real personality or the passion and the kind of heart, it's quicker or more closer that we can actually tell things straightforward, honesty. Taco mentioned that. But somehow that professionalism, and again the term, or the business situation, that kind of consciousness might block that or slow down or kind of hinder it, as it's not our kind of true ourselves. So humanism or more be yourself kind of philosophy / the practitioner, it is definitely more widespreading, maybe due to the COVID-19, what's important, life, people are realizing what we want to leave,
yeah,
and just leave the extra behind.
Yeah. I always have these questions who benefits from things being like this? Why? We just need to keep asking ourselves why. Isn't it a lot better if we are relating to each other as human beings and not machines, or that we can show our full selves? And then if we're talking about every interaction building trust and building health, for interactions to build trust, you need people to be whole, you need people to be there, you need people to be authentic, not like robots that have this uniform culture. Again, to bring the principles of regeneration, everyone has something unique to contribute. So how can we create spaces where that uniqueness can come? And this is a lot again about diversity and inclusion. How can we begin to include our full selves and include cultures that can also seem very different from your own culture? It's the same issues. It's just create safe spaces for people to express themselves, build trust, and work together, because we have a shared story. We talked a lot around collaboration, and even for regeneration and sustainability, we need to start having a shared story and a shared narrative and a shared reality of what we want to get collectively. And to do that, we need to be there whole, we need to be there in our full selves. Exactly. Find what's common, find what's, yeah. And what's common is our humanity, even if we have very different cultures. Yeah. But yeah, and I always suffer from that, because I'm very exotic everywhere that I am, because I don't adapt very well to where I am. So I'm always like this. I'm always a little bit loud, and I'm always a little bit colorful. But yeah, how can we create more spaces for people to be whatever, whoever they want to be? It's all the same thing. It's all about, releasing the blockages and the lack of the oppression. Like a cat. Yeah, of course. We should also bring animals into this conversation.
I like how I do a meeting during a quarantine time, because it's always my cat showing, saying meow to everyone, and even though even with the serious meetings, and that helps us a lot to ease the like first meeting stress.
Only Takaku can do it, but I'm learning from it. Like one stop to breathe, like one stop to, take a breath, and then we continue.
Yeah.
Health of our mental and heart and physical. Yeah, health. That's yeah.
Everywhere. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so it's 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
We want to hear your story more, but we have to stop because this is an hour now. So maybe like we're going to have a second round with you and we're going to hear more about your story. But we wanted to hear more story about your life and like your story of like got poisoned eating mushroom and like went to the hospital, that story. That was in the memo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to have a second interview where I can tell more personal stories. I have so many crazy stories.
Thank you so much for today, and hopefully to see you very soon. And next week we're gonna have so we got the internship from London, the girl living in, the college girl living in London. So we are doing like online internship right now. Like I don't know how it goes.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
maybe she's watching now. I don't know.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Hannah.
And then recently, as you mentioned, like we are more interested in like working with like food related sustainability and regeneration. And she's kind of, last time when I went to London, I went to this food called Mercato Metropolitano. It's food hall, but like focusing on sustainability. And she's gonna do a tour on the food court and showing like how they do like sustainability work as a food hall. So that's gonna be 2 weeks from now. And we're gonna announce that on Facebook. And yeah, that's it for now. So see you in 2 weeks. ありがとうございました。また。
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, Ruth.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. チャオチャオ。
今 YouTube を止めました。
ありがとうございます。